would like to begin with Mr. Aliou. Could you please share your introductory remarks about the topic that we're going to discuss today?
Thank you, officer. It's a great pleasure to be moderated by an officer woman of our army, and it is a pleasure to take part and participate in this panel and discuss about climate change effects and how it will affect directly at the women and in general in front of all people who are vulnerable towards the climate effects that are going to happen for sure also in our country. I was about to start my discussion with an example and tragedy that happened in Peja last year. And unfortunately, I will have to start now with expressing my pain, and as the pain of everyone here, and the minute of silence that's held here in the beginning, for the tragedy that happened in Peja today. Today, it is a woman shot by her husband. And my discussion actually was about to start with the tragedy that happened on June last year when the sudden flash floods happened in Peja, in the same city of Kosovo, which floods happened suddenly during the night and created a lot of damages and 2 casualties. And since who couldn't actually survive what happened last year in Peja, it was a woman and her little baby. This is actually one of the best examples that can be used to imagine that how vulnerable people and women in this case are directly in the front of the tragedies, and what it should be the entire approach of ours about the future situations that are going to happen done by climate change, actually influenced by climate change. Kosovo is a part of Mediterranean, and Mediterranean is one of the most sensitive areas in the world that is going to be influenced by climate change. And Kosovo is one of the areas that has a water scarcity. It's one of the most sensitive areas within the region. We lack water, and we are going to face floods and droughts and wildfires, and we are already facing this. We are just cannot notice that immediately, and our main focus of our government since these last 2 years, we have been doing a lot of steps by building secretariats and mechanisms for climate change mitigation effects and adaptation to climate change impacts. Drafting and approving strategies and energy and climate change strategy plans, and recently adopting the risk map and reaction to the risk by floods. All of these activities that has been taken has been always had the approach toward the role and effect that will have toward the women in this entire society. So not just looking at or having prognosis about the future, how it will happen, but also and taking part through the civil society and making them a part of the entire drafting of these strategies that are about to be approved, and draft laws are going to be approved in the future. Unfortunately, no matter that there has been taken a a lot of steps, especially on mitigation initiatives, where we have undertaken various initiatives to increase women's participation in the energy transition, such as our long-standing Women in Energy program, which continues with projects like MCC. Women's empowerment is crucial in our mitigation efforts, evident through initiatives like training programs, exchange studies abroad, and opportunities and skills sharing initiatives. Still, adaptation is one of our main challenges, and I have, again, to mention that since Kosovo is not a part of UNFCCC, still not recognized by UN, Kosovo doesn't have any access to UNFCCC funds and can not have a direct help for adaptation to the climate change effects and impacts that are going to happen and are happening actually. No matter, we have just concluded the hazardous flood risk map to identify zones in higher risk from flash floods under the 20 years, 100 years, and 1,000 years in climate change probability scenarios. And the tragedy that I just mentioned in Peja underscores the urgent need for effective adaptation measures in our region, and women are at the higher risk from these events. Kosovo urgently requires equitably access to climate finance to strengthen resilience and mitigate risks, highlighting the need for inclusion in multilateral adaptation funds. Ensuring fair access to resources is crucial in our commitment to leaving no one behind in our climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. So leaving no one behind is, let's say, the main motto of the UNFCCC and UN policies today for the climate change in the entire world. Kosovo is one of the countries that has been left behind in this entire enterprise. And we are taking care that all our layers of our society, every person, not to be left behind and not to repeat, to have repeat the same thing that's happened last year in Peja. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to proceed with Ms. Sisulu. Ma'am, please, could you share your opening remarks for us?
Thank you very much to you, Madam. I think we have a slight problem here, perhaps lost in translation. My input is about the general environment of security as seeing it from the African perspective, not the climatic environment. Is that okay? Do I proceed? Thank you very much. My sincerest gratitude to the conference for the invitation to myself. I'm a former Minister of Defense, and any matter of security is I have a passion for. And I want to say that we have benefited greatly from the way in which we're beginning to rethink security, ensure that women are at the center of any intervention that we have in dealing with security. Possibly because of our own struggles in South Africa and the enormous support that we receive from the international community, we found it necessary to be part of international conferences on security and other matters, which is why I am here, to say that what you have experienced, we have experienced, any solutions that you have, we might have experienced, and to share experiences with you in the course of finding a way in which we overcome the way that we thought of security very strictly along very set lines. My attention is focused on peacekeeping, on international cooperation, because we have determined that attention on peacekeeping and international cooperation is one of those areas that we learned a great deal from when we got into government. Our government took over from a very repressive government, which you probably all know about, And I was a cadet in that, and possibly now I'm a veteran of that armed forces. I became a Defense Force Minister in New South Africa, and our focus was to ensure that we can help the African continent get beyond the problems of continued fights, continued wars, so that we can live a normal life and deal with the climate change issues that you're talking about at the same level. As you know, we are constantly in a war situation on the African continent, trying to claim space. The totality of our experience is born out of the interventions that we have provided to other countries on the African continent. I must indicate at this point that we've always been very careful that we act within our relations and that we do not affect the relations that other countries have with other parts of the world. However, we have learned a lot in our interaction in ensuring that we can create a climate. And for us, when we talk of climate here, right now, we're talking of climate of peace, as opposed to the geographic climate change, which is why I was pointing out to you that either I'm in a wrong panel or perhaps something was lost in translation. But I will put my intervention, and if it is out of place, it will be put in the totality of the documents that you are producing. But I will continue. We have been involved as a South African Defense Force and the South African government in dealing with interventions in other countries where there have been war. And we have made it part of our obligation that we give back to the world what we got in support of our own struggle to get to where we are now. Our own lived experience as a people has taught us that fighting against gross human rights, which has remained a very painful part of our history, is something that we should tread very carefully on, because it affects everybody, and it is very raw on the African continent as we speak now. Often when we talk about the role of women in a situation of fragility, such as war, we don't understand the depth that women have to affect the outcome of any situation that we're in. Because we cannot forget, we as South Africans, our experience is something that we use to assist other countries to overcome some of their problems. We got into government and established a commission of reconciliation, and as part of our painful attempt to get over what we have experienced, we decided that we would make ourselves available to other countries on the African continent whenever they find themselves in a situation of conflict, and this is what we've done. So one of the first things that we did was to invite the women of the Congo, the DRC, to come to South Africa so we can talk to them and see how we as South Africans can intervene and assist them get out of their situation. We do this quite often. We intervene in other countries on the African continent because we believe that our interrelatedness makes it necessary for us who have the necessary experience to be out there and create an environment of peace. At the time that we got into government, the DRC had a prolonged underlying war, and we were called upon as a new government to help solve the problem of the country which had descended into crisis. And when a country descends into crisis, everything falls apart, infrastructure and everything else that is there. What we did as a South African government was to call the warring parties from the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to come and discuss with us so that we can find a way in which we can influence them into finding a negotiated settlement, which is what we had gone through as a South African government. After about 8 months of trying to find a way of helping a negotiated settlement with the DRC, we realized that we were missing something. We as a government were talking to people from the DRC who might not even have been involved in a war. So we decided that we were going to try and find a way in which we could intervene. By this time, we're into our second year of negotiations, and we're not making any progress at all. So we approached the people of the DRC and to try and find out, is there any way in which we could find an intermediary in which we could then ensure that the war is over and create peace and stability for the people of the DRC? And what came up was very alarming for us, because what we were informed is the people who would actually drive change in the DRC and change the fortunes of war were the women of the DRC. And the people we were talking to were the people who were conducting war. So we decided, okay, so why don't we call the women? If the women have so much power, why don't we call the women, and the women can influence the direction in which the discussions are going. By this time, we were in about a year into discussions with the DRC generals and all of those people, talking a highfalutin language about peace and all of those things, until we got to this particular point that women are absolutely central whenever a society goes through a crisis, because women have in them an instinctive way of finding what the cause of the problem is and making sure that that solution is found through the women. That is our experience of trying to find peace on the African continent. So what we did is we said to the warring parties, we will allow you to bring women into the situation that we're talking about and make sure that by the time that we get to a conclusion of this, it has the buy-in on the women. What did we learn from this as South Africans who were doing possibly what you're doing now, bringing parties together to discuss how we can create a better life for all in a better climate, in a better environment, and a better situation? We found that women are not a belligerent species. They are not naturally a belligerent species. And given any opportunity, they are less likely to resort to war than men. So we thought, here is something that we should have known, that for us to get a permanent resolution to any problem, women are absolutely essential in solving that problem. We found that in the DRC, this is a war that had been continuing for some years now, until they got to South Africa. So what did we do? We learned, and we changed our approach. At that time, I was Minister of Intelligence. Later, I became Minister of Defense, so I was part of the discussions that were going on. We have now changed the way that we relate to war in South Africa. We've now changed the way that we relate to warring parties in other parts of the country. We found that through women, we get to the nexus very quickly. We get to the nub of the problem very quickly. We are also able to get to the way of solving a problem very quickly. And this is something that in all the time that we ourselves were fighting had completely overlooked. The essence that women are absolutely essential in any peace, in any resolution that will change a situation. What attracted me to this conference was the concept of rethinking solutions. That when you put women at the center of rethinking solutions, you will find the quickest way of getting to where you want to get to. I'm using this experience because we've gone on to help the crises we've experienced on the continent, with the coup in the Comoros, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, by making sure that when we're discussing a solution, whatever the solution is, women are an essential part of getting to that conclusion. We've been very fortunate in our government. I believe it's because we've kept women's successes in our hand, and we've made sure that women occupy positions in our government that are pivotal in influencing other societies, other countries, and the world in general. I believe women have the ability to deal with a whole range of matters and a whole world that is molded along the erratic, impalpable world of political relations driven by men. When you put women at the center of solutions, any solution, you can be very sure that it will provide you a lasting response to any problem that we have. We learned this from our interventions. Today, I can say in the African continent, we have less wars than we had in the past, because we have learned of the power of women. Put women first in solving any matter at hand, and the women will have a solution to that problem. A solution that is binding on the men, a solution that is binding across boundaries, a solution that is binding across any problem that society might encounter. And I was glad to come here to say, in any solution, if women are not at the center, you haven't found the solution. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for your remarks, and I will share this information with you. I did have the honor of reading your biography, and being impressed is the least I could say about all that I read for you, ma'am. So I do believe that we will take a lot of advantage of your experience and your knowledge, ma'am. So thank you. We would like to proceed with Ms. Karic. Please provide your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Esteemed guests, distinguished delegates, and fellow advocates for gender equity and climate action. Dear colleagues and dear friends from Pristina, it's my great pleasure and honor to be today here in the capital city of Republic of Kosovo, in Pristina. Please allow me to greet all my friends and colleagues from Sarajevo who are here today, especially Ms. Elvira Dushi, President of Albanian Community in Sarajevo, and Dr. Samir Bejic, Member of City Council of City of Sarajevo. We are one great team, and we feel in Pristina like we are in our own home. Also, many thanks and greets for one amazing lady and beautiful friend of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Emilia Redzepi, who is here today with us. Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina are friends, and Sarajevo and Pristina are cities with a great future for cooperation. Allow me to say that I'm very thankful to Ms. President because of the invitation on this amazing Women, Peace and Security Conference, especially in the time when Bosnia and Herzegovina is in one very specific position. I would say that now, these days, we are struggling for resolution for genocide in Srebrenica in front of the UN. And we are very thankful to all friends in Kosovo and all friends in Pristina, and especially to Ms. President, because she's strongly supporting resolution about Srebrenica in front of the UN. It's very important for us to keep the memory about the hardest genocide in Srebrenica, the hardest genocide after the Second World War. So thank you very much for your friendship. Allow me now to say that I must say that we feel very sorry, and we understand the pain because of the loss of 2 lives in Kosovo. 2 women were killed in last few days, as I understood here in Pristina. We are very sad and we feel your pain. Unfortunately, also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, numbers of femicide are decreasing in last year. So I hope so that together we can also we can stick together in this question and support each other and find a solution how to resolve this hard and painful problem for our countries and for our cities. Cities as Sarajevo and Pristina and in general local communities are always on the front line, and it means that also we have a special task because we are very close to people. We need to talk every day about important questions in our society, and of course that climate questions and climate problems are among the first ones that we need to talk and that we need to resolve in our communities. Sarajevo is elected among many cities in the world to be among 100 climate neutral cities till 2030. So we are working very strong to improve climate politics in our city. I would say that in the fierce battle against this existential threat, women emerge as beacons of resilience and innovation. And I'm very proud on a strong women that are on the first and front line in Sarajevo. Unfortunately, in our local communities, we have really small number of women on a leading positions, and we should change that in future, especially because this year we have local elections, so we have great opportunity to change this. Women are the active agents of change. They're leading efforts to adapt to its impact and mitigate its consequences, from rural farmers implementing sustainable agricultural practices to urban activists advocating for clean energy solutions. Women are the front of climate action, driving progress and inspiring hope in their communities and beyond. Yet, despite their invaluable contributions, the voices and needs of women are often marginalized in global strategies and financial mechanisms. This panel serves as a clarion call to change the status quo and advocate for a transformative approach where gender equity is not merely an afterthought, but a foundational principle in crafting climate change policies and strategies. We must acknowledge and amplify the multi-faced role of women as agents of change, guardians of community resources, and leaders in adaptation and mitigation strategies. Their knowledge, expertise, and lived experiences are essential for designing effective and equitable climate solutions. As such, it is imperative that we prioritize their inclusion and participation in decision-making processes at all levels, from local to international. In Sarajevo, we have witnessed firsthand the resilience and ingenuity of women who are leading efforts to address the impacts of climate change. From rebuilding communities devastated by natural disasters to advocating for sustainable urban development, women are driving transformative change and building more resilient societies. However, we also recognize that gender inequalities persist, especially the vulnerabilities of women and girls to the impacts of climate change. Women often bear the brunt of environmental degradation, facing increased risk of displacement, food insecurity, and violence in the wake of climate-related disasters. Therefore, our efforts to address climate change must be guided by principles of gender equity and social justice, ensuring that no one left behind. As we engage in discussion today, let us commit to cutting through the complexity of integrating gender responsiveness into climate action. This requires us to reimagine policies, strategies, and financing mechanisms to genuinely meet the needs of women and promote their empowerment. We must strive for inclusivity, ensuring that women from diverse backgrounds and contexts are not only heard, but also actively involved in shaping the solutions that affect their lives and communities. In conclusion, let us seize this opportunity to somehow put climate solutions in the first place because they are important for frontline communities and pave the way for a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Together, we can build a world where gender equity and climate justice are not just aspirations, but fundamental principles guiding our collective actions. In the end, I would use this opportunity to invite my esteemed colleagues, panelists from today, to visit our city of Sarajevo so we can present what we are doing in our local community in the field of climate action and change. And I hope so that the results of this project, Sarajevo among 100 climate neutral cities, will give the concrete results, and that on our next gathering, maybe in Sarajevo, we could present what have we done from today till the end of this project. I would just like to say that when we talk about climate change and infrastructure, because city of Sarajevo, as all other local communities, is very committed to change and to make infrastructure in the city more green, more sustainable. We are constantly working on promoting the new way of transport. We are constantly creating a new bicycle lanes. We are supporting our citizens to think about climate change. Especially, we have, I would say, a natural push this year because April is, the temperatures in April are the highest in last 100 years, and citizens are feeling the change. And when citizens feel the change on the ground, I think that we have additional pressure to think about these topics, to talk about these topics. And of course, I would say that women are much more sensitive in the way that they feel better the problems. And I must say that I will use this beautiful sentence from my dear colleague, that if you put women in a central position of any problem, the problem would be solved, I'm sure, much more quicker than ever. Thank you very much. This panel was a real inspiration.
Thank you, Ms. Karic. I would like to proceed with Ms. Sherpa, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator and Honorable Minister and all the distinguished panelists and all the prominent gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend my heartiest greetings to the Madam President for these wonderful opportunities for the delegation of Nepal to be here today at this very important functions to present some of the issues and concerns of these of the mountain communities, the frontline issues that we are having, especially because the indigenous mountain communities that I belong from, they are one of the most vulnerable communities that has been impacted by the climate change. So globally, Nepal is ranked the 4th in terms of vulnerability to climate change. And of course, climate change is impacting all of us. But while it comes to the vulnerable communities, that impact is almost double. So Nepal has come a long way from the armed conflict to the new constitution. Today, we have a wonderful representation of women at all levels. We have 33% of women in parliament from the new constitution. I was one of the members of the constitution making process. So being part of that constitution making process, I can feel honored to share that while we used to draft the constitution, we had played that prominent role, that important role where we had no any kind of, principle of politics we have maintained. We have maintained a kind of, unity among the issues of gender equality. On the issues of women where, we have to sort out that all state mechanisms have to provide that equal representation of women at all levels. While it comes to that kind of discussions in that kind of committee, I was the member of the State Restructuring Committee, and there, irrespective of different political ideologies, we women used to come together to have that women-friendly policies. So that really makes difference. While it comes to, we are from different countries, we are from different political parties, we definitely support different political principles. But while it comes to the, making gender-friendly policies, we all come together. And that is very necessary while in terms of making policies friendly towards the women. And having said that, we do have now a wonderful representation at all levels. Even at the local level, we have more than 50% of women representation. We have 33% of women representation in the parliament. But now what we realize is, representation itself doesn't, makes difference. Unless and until the woman comes into the action to prove that her leadership definitely make difference. That's why today is time to come that we need to now deliver. We need to deliver, and we need to, prove the world that definitely the women leadership is making difference, to show the world that, the equality and injustice must be addressed in terms of the representation, but at the same time, we also have to make that prominent role in addressing the issues and concerns of women. And having said that, I just want to thank the President of Kosovo for this remarkable contribution of having this forum, and would like to thank her for her dedication and vision in paving the way for a more inclusive and equitable future. Your leadership definitely continues to inspire all of us. So Nepalese women had still fought a long way. We still have a long way to achieve that real equality. But at the same time, the climate change poses a unique and pressing threat to women and mountain communities worldwide. As primary caregivers, the resource managers and agents of community resilience, women in these regions have faced disproportionate challenges due to the intersection of gender inequalities and environmental degradation. Erratic weather patterns, glaciers melting. I came from the Sherpa communities, and the Sherpa communities, they are very much, good in mountain climbing. And I have just heard from one of my colleagues who is leading the UNHCR office over here in Kosovo. He's from Nepal. And he said that one of the lady from Kosovo had just climbed Mountain Everest several times from Kosovo. So I think that's a very important message that I have got from him. And having said that, what I was trying to say that, these days, even the mountain climbing has become difficult because of the glaciers melting, because of the climate impacts. There are communities, livelihoods on these mountains had definitely affected from these from the impacts of climate change. So how we are going to address those small issues, which is very much linked with the indigenous communities' livelihood? I think that we all have to take into account. As we confront these escalating impacts of climate change on women and mountain communities, I would like to urge the President of Kosovo to take the lead in establishing a global gender-responsive climate alliance, which such an initiative would prioritize the inclusion of women's perspectives, expertise in leadership action. By fostering collaboration and empowering women within these vulnerable communities, we can forge a more effective and equitable response to the climate.
To ask the minister now. And now, based on the introductory remarks, I can say that if there was a key word here, that was woman empowerment. So then I would like a keynote or a takeaway note from you, Minister, on the policies or the strategies that we can apply in order to promote and empower females. Thank you.
Thank you. If we look what we have in front of us and the consequences that we are going to face due to climate change, we can see that there is a strong struggle in front of us, not just for our citizens here, but for the entire world community. And on the previous panel here, it was the presence of many women that took part on our struggles for the freedom of our citizens. And we are free today since massively the population and citizens of Kosovo has been raising against the violence and occupation at that time. So until we didn't have a total homogeneous uprising of our people, we were struggling a lot, but many times being just circling around in the same circle. The role of women on liberation of Kosovo, it was a crucial one. And same today, in our struggle on climate change impacts and consequences we are going to face, the entire strategies are about to be seen through the perspective of the vulnerable and marginalized groups, and especially women. If the role of women on our liberation has been crucial, let us never forget that the most harmed and most sensitive and vulnerable part of the entire world has been exactly women and children. Same as the example that I just mentioned that happened last year in Peja. So who couldn't survive on that flash flood in Peja? It was a woman and her son. So the entire strategies to be sustainable and to be resilient, they need to be seen from the perspective of the women, of the women in our society. Therefore, our, let us say, gender-responsive approach on our strategies, they are, let us say, a part of our strategy that has been established and drafted on these 2 years since we have started and established our let us say, interministerial committee and the secretariat, drafting the laws and drafting the plans, energy and climate change plans. And they all have been, in a way, in collaboration with the civil society and especially with the marginalized group and women. We shouldn't forget, again, that there are a lot of plans that has been taken. We look at the perspective of our economical development, agriculture, that are all going to be affected by climate change. These strategies are not going to be fully sustainable if we look at the agricultural development in the future, that is not going to be seen from the women's perspective. We should not forget that the entire, our economy has been built upon women's strength and their force. We should just open now the space and give them the opportunity to lead on the decision making, same as it was said here. If we look again at our history, our revolutionary movements or the movements that we were fighting against, they became sustainable when in every structures of these organizations, a part of them has been women taking part on these discussions. We believe that we are in a good path, and we have taken a good lessons from the past, and especially we hope to take lessons from every day that we are facing the difficulties for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to ask Ms. Karic, she mentioned several initiatives. But my question is, what are the measures that you have undertaken to make sure that your initiatives are being inclusive and equitable, to make sure that you're empowering women as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would say that one initiative is very strong in Sarajevo, and we see that the results of the initiatives are very good. It's actually climate action plan. Because when you are on the ground, when you are in a local community, the most important thing is to include people, to include municipalities, to include all citizens, to include youth, to include young generations, to include everyone who is interested to participate. So with this climate action plan, we actually put it in one place. What are the most important things that we should improve in next 5 years? And we are very proud on that. Of course, we will, in the end of the year, we will find how successful we were, because of course climate action plan is just a letter on a paper if you do not follow the results. But I must say that a few days ago, 3 days ago, we won one award for the green projects in Western Balkans. For one project, we created urban garden and sensory park in one school. So it's a beautiful example of green project, and it's a beautiful example of inclusivity of our projects in a way to be very active in our action plan for climate change. And now the urban garden and sensory park, it's in use every day. So we are doing our best to create as much as we can in all parts of the city, some small urban islands or green parks and sensory parks. So when you really want in local community, you can always find a way to make improvement in this field. So that's why in the beginning I said that of course that national politics are important, and of course that politics about climate change are always on a higher levels, but on a local ground, in the local communities, with the small projects, with a small amount of money, we can really start the change. And I would also say that this climate action plan and all these projects, small projects that I'm talking about, the most important thing is to change the perspective and to clear the vision of people on the ground. So when you talk in schools, when climate action and when you present climate action plans as a part of education, then everything is easier. And I think that it should be also our priority in future. So, okay, we are doing our best in local communities, on all other levels of government, but to educate young generations and to present them how important for all of us is to take the climate action very seriously, then it will be easier for us later to follow all these politics. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to ask Ms. Sherpa on the measures that they, in the case you, ma'am, apply to address gender disparities and ensure the inclusion of women.
Especially while we draft the constitutions, we have come up with a kind of understanding to have 33% of representation of women in the parliament. While the women representation has been ensured, definitely, that will boost up the moral confidence of the, women and communities, communities. So that's how, from the representation from the parliament, even at the local level, now we have more than 40% of women representation at the local level. And that has also definitely boosted the moral value, the empowerment, the self-confidence level of our women leaders even from the local level. So now our women leaders at the local level, they are also working and, empowering each other to come up ahead and lead and make a difference at the ground, at the local level, which is very important because in dealing the issues of climate change, if we fail to act at the local level, if we fail to address the issues of the local communities, and if we plan any policies and programs related to climate change without involving the local communities, that will never make difference. That's why inclusion is one of the major strategies which has to be addressed in making most of these climate change planning and policies that we used to have, Because while you include women at the local level, that will definitely bring some difference from her family to the bigger society. Because if the woman is educated and if she know the awareness level of the, how to act, the adaptiveness of the climate change, she is more familiar. From the local level, from her house, from her own garden, she is working on day and night, dealing with the climate change issues. So she has that capability of adaptability and the issues how she is going to deal. So that is the kind of knowledge that we should take at the local level, and we should manage the inclusivity, the social inclusion be addressed, especially on making we used to make the plan and programs and policies related with the climate change. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ma'am. And I'll have to say this, even if we had the entire day to spend together, I think we would be able to find enough information to share and knowledge to share, but unfortunately the time we have available is quite limited. So now I would like to kindly ask you to address the audience with your final key takeaway notes. I'll start with Mr. Aliou.
At first, great thank to Madam President that has organized this great event. And we have to thank her also for the help that has been giving toward our ministry on the support, on establishing and in general affirmating our initiatives, especially on the volunteer NDC, that Kosovo is becoming, let us say, one of the unique countries about starting the NDC on the volunteer, that no matter that it is not our responsibility since we are not recognized by UN. Kosovo has been starting this, and Madam President has been supporting this by making this quite visible and seeking help from other countries, especially on the activities that has happened on COP28. Actually, this is, say, these entire steps and strategies that has been taken wouldn't have happened if, let me just say, the entire team that was working on these documents, mainly they were women. Therefore, I do believe that also from Madam Shuru that she has just raised the issue that Madam President should start kind of global gender response. And it is already happening. There is a strong energy and will from our Madam President, and hope that we will continue and have a similar conference in the future with much bigger results.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to proceed with Ms. Khalid, please.
Thank you once more. I would say that the key word is cooperation, cooperation between cities, cooperation between local communities, but also cooperation between countries. I'm very proud to be here today because yesterday, after 30 years, maybe even more, we had the first official meeting between mayors of Sarajevo and Pristina. So I'm sure that we can share our ideas, that we can share our projects, that we can share our visions, but the most important thing is to gather together and to share the experiences. That's why I'm very thankful to participate on Women, Peace and Security Conference, because we have, as you said, the entire day would not be enough for us to share all the ideas and projects that we can do together. I'm sure that after this conference we will have much more opportunities and free space to work together. So work together, and especially in the field of climate action and climate change, but also I'm very happy that in this story and on this panel, although we talk about climate action, we put a woman role in the center of this question. So thank you very much, and I hope so to see you very soon in Sarajevo or in Pristina. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Sharpa, please.
My final words is definitely thank you. And we are definitely, Nepal is always, joining hands together with the Madam President, especially while in terms of, empowering women and inspiring from each other's stories. I think that is the most important part. And it's a great pleasure to be here today, listening to such a, important panelists today, especially the mayor and the honorable minister. I think we had come a long way on different issues that we have learned from each other's presentations. And of course, Nepal is always there while in terms of dealing with the climate crisis. As a developing nations, I think we have to join hands together, because the emissions and all those, the emissions creators, I think we have to find our own way to have a wonderful dealing to tackle these issues, especially for those who are really, having a very struggling period, especially dealing with the climate crisis. I think we have to join our hands together on these areas, and we will definitely welcome you all in Nepal as well. In terms of adventurers, if you want to see those adventurous parts of the world, so I think Nepal is one of the best area to have that adventurous feeling. So I think I would like to welcome the Honorable Minister and the panelists over here and all the delegates who is listening to our session today to Nepal, and thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here today.
Minister, ladies, thank you for being here. Audience, thank you very much. That concludes the session for today. Thank you very much.